Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith. Today, I'm talking about The Perfectly Fine Neighborhood. This is an anthology edited by Kayleigh Dobbs, Stephen Kozeniewski, and Wile E. Young. It is from French Press, and as I said, it's an anthology haunted by Candace Nola, Brian Keene, Jeff Strand, Bev Vincent, and more. And this is a book of short stories inspired by the novel The Perfectly Fine House by Stephen Kozeniewski and Wile E. Young. And in the novel, the world is filled with ghosts. They're an everyday thing. Humans, animals, ghosts are everywhere. They're part of life. A lot of elected positions are filled by ghosts because there's more ghosts than there are living people, and they have voting rights. But in this world, there's a house where there are no ghosts, and that leads to some horrific things. But Kozeniewski and Young set up the rules for this world, how things work, all sorts of interesting world building, and so a bunch of authors got to play in that sandbox. And let's see. So we have, I'm just going to read everybody that's in here: Stephen Kozeniewski, Bev Vincent, J.C. Smith, Wile E. Young, Jeff Strand, Candace Nola, Ryan Brednick, Zachary Rosenberg, Shane Burnham, Annie Knox, Brian Keene, Gavin Dillinger, Kay Hannafin, D.C. Hill, and Kayleigh Dobbs. So, for the too long didn't watch folks, I gave this, I'm not sure. I think I gave it 4 out of 5. It's, as with any anthology, the stories are up and down. I don't think there's any bad stories in here. There's some great stories. So pretty much from good to great stories. So 4 out of 5 stars. And the stories range from, like, the first story is horrific. The First Ghost by Stephen Kozeniewski is a horrifying story. It is a straight up horror story. Some of the stories are a little more lighthearted. Some of the stories play with the rules that Kozeniewski and Young set in their original novel. Some of the stories are pretty much close-ended, I think. Some of them are a little more open-ended. Some are bigger stories. Some are more intimate stories. I enjoyed Jurisdiction by Bev Vincent, although I kind of could see where it was going. The Blue Mausoleum, very, very odd story from J.C. Smith. Auld Lang Syne by Wile E. Young was really interesting. It's, man, with short stories, I hate to say too much. I don't want to give anything away. It's about a bunch of people who are ghosts because they were victims of a mass shooting. But a very specific mass shooting, an office, a workplace mass shooting. And then something happens. The Jeff Strand story, fun as always. Candace Nola's story, Click, very odd. The whole Click thing was very creepy. The way she wrote the story was just shivers. Addicted to Slaughter by Shane Burnham was one of those stories. I really, really liked the story itself, but I felt that the ending was too abrupt. It's going along, it's building this story, taking place in this world, and then it's boom, it's just over. Something happens and it's just over. So I really enjoyed it. It's an author I'm not familiar with, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of their work, but hopefully not quite as abrupt an ending in whatever they do next. Incorporeal tax. So that's the kind of thing we have. It's a story about, ghosts are being taxed, or the living who are with the ghosts are being taxed. It's a very strange world with some very interesting stuff going on. The last word, Kayleigh Dobbs has the last story. Very, very fun. And it's essentially a woman who's in prison and is writing a letter to law enforcement saying, hey, I didn't commit that murder. Let me tell you my story and what I think actually happened, because I didn't do it. Very fun story. I'm a big fan of Kayleigh Dobbs. And this is a world where if you're convicted of a crime, let's say it's some horrific crime, and you're sentenced to 3 life sentences. Although 2 would be, we'll just go with 2. You're sentenced to 2 life sentences. You're put in prison until you die, and then you're put in assault prison to hold your ghost for the 2nd life sentence. So that kind of thing is what's going on. So The Pefectly Fine Neighborhood, a really fun anthology, 4 out of 5 stars. Again, ranging from truly horrifying stories to lighthearted, fun, funny stories. I like what each author did with the world, the sandbox they were given to play in. I wouldn't mind seeing more stories taking place in this world. So that's it. I'm not sure what else to say. I don't want to go over just every story in the book, and I can't talk about the stories too much without giving things away. These are short stories. Saying too much can just blow the whole deal, and I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but I do recommend it. You don't have to have read The Pefectly Fine House before reading this. I think this gives you everything you need to know within each story. And again, the most important thing is that ghosts are part of the world. But I would recommend you read The Pefectly Fine House first. Pefectly Fine House first. Sounded a little jumbled the first time I said it to me. So check out that book. Check out this book. I don't think you're going to be wasting your time. All right, question for this video. I think when I reviewed The Pefectly Fine House, I asked people for their favorite haunted house stories. So, you know what? I'm going to go super generic here and just say, what is your favorite anthology? Just to be clear, just in case anyone's not clear, an anthology is a collection of short stories by different authors versus a short story collection, which is short stories by a single author. So, favorite anthology. As always, did not think ahead. I could throw all the way back to when I was a kid. There was an anthology I read called Shudders. Shudders. And I just remember that the monkey's paw was in it, and there was a story, I believe, by Robert Bloch, on one of the early forums that I was on back in the day. Someone else had read it and mentioned that I think that it's a Robert Bloch story, the first or second story in the book, that really freaked me out when I was a kid. A book I would love to have again. So Shudders is up there. I gotta say, I really like Marvel Comics, and whoever the publisher was did a bunch of anthologies of different characters or different groups. They have one that's just all supervillain stories. I really like that one. They were all good if you're a comic book fan and you like that kind of stuff, but I liked the collection of short stories that's all just villains. There was a great set of anthologies that came out at a time. I wish I still had these. It was like the Ultimate Frankenstein, the Ultimate Dracula. I think there was the Ultimate Werewolf and the Ultimate Mummy. And they all had similar covers. And they were essentially what they said. The Frankenstein one was Frankenstein monster stories. The Dracula one, Dracula and vampire stories, etc. Those were really good anthologies. I know I'm forgetting a lot, and I've read some good anthologies, but again, trying to do this off the top of my head. But there's some, I just threw some out at you. Let me know if you have a favorite anthology in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH5757. And if you're on Blue Sky, I am @ELSmith. That's all I have for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.